You may think you know America, the cities, the landmarks, the wide open spaces. But behind the picturesque scenes, there's another America. An America filled with unsolved mysteries, haunted places, and terrifying stories that no one dares to talk about. Tonight, we bring you 7 of the most chilling real horror stories from across the United States. These stories are not meant to entertain. They are raw, unsettling, and true. These are the stories that make you question your reality and wonder if what you think is safe really is. From eerie encounters in small towns to terrifying experiences in the heart of the wilderness, these are the stories that the locals will never speak of, and the ones you'll wish you could forget. So sit tight, turn off the lights, and prepare yourself to step into the unknown. My son's laughter woke me at 3 a.m. Then something outside our tent laughed back in a voice that wasn't human. I would consider myself an outdoorsman, grew up in the sticks, spent years wandering the backcountry. I've stared down bears, navigated blizzards, and slept under skies so dark they swallowed the stars. But nothing prepared me for that sound. A chilling mimic of my 5-year-old son, Ethan, calling his own name from the void beyond our campfire. It wasn't just a sound. It was a violation, a predator wearing my child's voice, lurking in the shadows of a forest that suddenly felt alive with malice. I'm Jack, a guy who left the wild for a picket fence life. Wife, 2 boys, a house, a dog, a desk job, the whole suburban stick. But the forest never left me. Its pull is in my blood, a call to wide open spaces where the air tastes like freedom. I wanted opportunities for my kids from suburban life, but also for them to grow up with an appreciation for the outdoors. That's why, last summer, I took Ethan, barely 5 years old, on his first father-son camping trip. Because Ethan was just 5, I didn't want anything too extreme. No rugged backcountry or multi-day treks through bear country, just a quiet weekend in Colorado's Front Range. A chance to show him the magic of the wild, to build memories that would anchor him as he grew. A dispersed camping area called Gordon Gulch, west of Boulder, caught my attention. No RV parks with chattering families, no campgrounds cluttered with Wi-Fi routers and picnic tables. There were no facilities, dispersed enough that you couldn't see or hear other campers nearby. Just us, a tent, a crackling fire, and the endless stretch of pines under a sky bursting with stars. I'd found Gordon Gulch online, a hidden gem, remote but accessible, perfect for a kid's first trip. The reviews glowed. Pristine, peaceful, a slice of untouched wilderness. But there were other comments buried in forums that I'd skimmed and dismissed. Hikers mentioning odd shadows, locals warning about nights when the forest felt wrong. I chalked it up to campfire tales. Every wild place has its myths. We rolled into the gulch as the sun dipped low, painting the mountains in hues of fire and gold. Ethan was a bundle of energy, his tiny backpack bouncing as he helped me pitch the tent, his hands tugging at stakes with all the seriousness a 5-year-old could muster. We had a blast that day, set up camp, collected firewood, went for a hike, saw a moose and a bobcat, tried a little fishing. The forest buzzed with life. Birds flitted through the canopy. A breeze carried the scent of pine and earth, and Ethan's laughter rang out as he chased a butterfly down a trail. By dusk, we sat by the fire, a very traditional camping meal of fire-burned hot dogs and marshmallows. Ethan's face was a mess of melted sugar, his eyes wide as he pointed at the Milky Way, naming stars with made-up names like Superhero Glow. It was a good day, a core memory for both of us. I felt like the dad I'd always wanted to be, strong, present, giving my son a piece of the world I loved. But there was a shadow beneath the joy, a subtle weight I couldn't name. The fire's light seemed to falter at the tree line, as if the darkness pushed back, refusing to yield. During our hike, I'd noticed a tree with branches snapped clean, not by wind but by force, the breaks too precise, too recent. Nearby, the dirt was disturbed, scuffed in a way that didn't match deer or elk tracks. I didn't tell Ethan, he was too busy splashing in a creek, giggling as minnows darted from his toes. But the sight lodged in my mind, a quiet alarm I tried to ignore. I told myself it was nothing, just the wear of the wild. Still, as the sun sank and the forest grew still, that weight grew heavier, like eyes watching from the dark. We crawled into our sleeping bags, the tent a soft cocoon against the night. Ethan's small body curled beside me, his warmth a comfort. The sound of an evening summer breeze through the pines was better than any sleep aid. His soft snores filled the air, and I drifted off, dreaming of open trails and the boy he'd become. But Gordon Gulch had other plans. The forest was awake, and it wasn't alone. The darkness was a living thing, pressing against the tent with a weight that smothered my dreams. I was catapulted out of the void of sleep, not sure what aroused me. My heart slammed against my ribs, every sense screaming that something was wrong. The breeze through the treetops whispered, but it carried a sharpness, like a blade hidden in silk. Ethan slept beside me, his small chest rising and falling, oblivious to the shift in the air. One thing about my son is that he inherited sleep-talking from his mother. He'd spin whole stories in his dreams, not unusual to hear him having full conversations with imaginary friends or his little brother, Liam. But what woke me wasn't his usual babble. A deep belly laugh from Ethan cut through my groggy confusion. It was so vivid, so full of joy. It almost warmed me, until it was answered. From outside the tent, a laugh echoed, identical to Ethan's, every note a perfect mirror. I held my breath and listened, unsure of what I just heard. It wasn't an echo. The forest doesn't mimic with that kind of precision. It was laughing in unison with my son. My skin crawled, a primal fear clawing up my spine. I sat up, pulse racing, trying to anchor myself in logic. A prank? An animal? But deep down, I knew it was neither. This was something else, something wrong. I nudged Ethan gently, hoping to hush him. I gently rocked him, and that was enough to quiet him down. His laughter faded and silence descended. But it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam slicing through the tent's thin canvas, revealing nothing but shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. My hands trembled as I gripped the light, willing my eyes to see something, anything to explain this. Then it came again. Ethan burst out laughing, and again it was answered with laughter outside. This time, it was closer, too close maybe. 15 feet away, just beyond the fire's dead embers. My mind scrambled for answers. Coyotes don't laugh. Owls don't mimic children. Another camper? Gordon Gulch was dispersed enough that you couldn't hear other campers nearby. I'd chosen this spot for its isolation, its solitude. Then a voice cut through the night, soft and chillingly familiar. "Ethan," it called, clear as day. The voice outside called my son's name and my blood ran cold. It was Liam's voice, my toddler, safe at home with my wife, miles away. Impossible. My flashlight beam danced across the tent, searching for a source, but the darkness seemed to swallow the light, leaving only that voice, that name, hanging in the air. "Liam?" Ethan mumbled in his sleep, responding to the call. My 5-year-old, still fast asleep, called out to his brother, asking him to play. The thing outside laughed again, urging my son to come outside, sounding cold, hollow, dead. It wasn't just mimicking, it was mocking. A cruel parody of my youngest son's voice, dripping with malice. The floodgates of my adrenaline burst open. I wasn't just Jack, the suburban dad with a mortgage and a minivan. I was in Papa Bear mode, and nothing was going to hurt my son. I reached for my .45, the cold steel, a lifeline in my shaking hands. You don't mess with my kids. Camping in the wild, you prepare for threats. Bears, cougars, even people with bad intentions. But this was beyond preparation. The air turned frigid, my breath fogging in the July night, an impossible chill that sank into my bones. A low thrum rose from the ground, not a sound but a vibration, pulsing through my chest, making my teeth ache. I unzipped the tent flap, just a crack, and peered out. The campsite was still, fire gone, pick up a dark silhouette under the moonlight. But the pines loomed larger, their branches clawing at the sky, their shadows twisting into shapes that didn't belong. Then, movement. I could hear twigs crunching beyond our thin tent walls. Not the heavy stomp of a bear, but light, deliberate steps, circling us like a shark in deep water. I swung the flashlight, but the beam faltered, as if the darkness was a physical thing pushing back. The voice called Ethan's name again, unprompted, in that toddler voice. Now it was closer, maybe 5 feet from the tent, right at the edge of the fire pit. My throat tightened, my pulse a deafening roar in my ears. It wasn't just calling, it was beckoning, pulling at Ethan's dreams, trying to lure him out. Ethan giggled again, softer, lost in his sleep. He laughed again, and it was answered. The laugh outside was sharper now, a blade of sound, cruel and hungry. I gripped the gun tighter, sweat slicking my palms despite the cold. The thrum grew louder, syncing with my heartbeat, and the air felt thick, pressing on my chest like a physical weight. Whatever was out there wasn't just watching, it was hunting, and it knew exactly who we were. The forest seemed to close in, the pines leaning closer, their needles whispering secrets I couldn't understand. I thought of Ethan's laughter by the fire, his small hand in mine as we hiked, his trust in me absolute. I couldn't fail him. But the voice called again, "Ethan, come play." And it was so close now, I could almost feel its breath through the tense fabric. My mind raced. How could it know Liam's voice? How could it know Ethan's name? I'd never believed in the supernatural, never given credence to ghost stories or cryptids. But this wasn't a story. This was real, and it was here, inches from my son. I tried to steady my breathing, to think like the outdoorsman I used to be. Maybe it was a person, some sick prankster hiding in the woods. But the chill, the thrum, the way the darkness seemed to move, it didn't add up. I glanced at Ethan, his face peaceful, grasping for explanations. Was this real? Was I losing it? I'd read about stress hallucinations, about fear-twisting perception, but this was too vivid, too physical. The claw marks were real, carved into the wood, their edges splintered and Ethan, he'd heard it too, hadn't he? His screams weren't just a dream. Stumbled back to the tent, my legs heavy, the flashlight beam jittering across the ground. Ethan was awake now, curled in his sleeping bag, eyes wide with fear. "Daddy, was that Liam?" he sobbed, his voice small and broken. "Just a nightmare, buddy," I lied, my own voice cracking. But I couldn't meet his eyes. I picked him up, put him in the truck, locked the doors, and broke down camp. Every movement felt watched, every rustle of leaves a threat. As I packed, I found something else. A single twig snapped and twisted into a crude spiral, lying by the fire pit. It smelled faintly of rot, like something long dead. its surface slick with an oily sheen. I threw it into the embers, watching it curl and blacken, but the smell clung to my hands, my clothes, my mind. I strapped Ethan into the truck, his small body trembling against the seatbelt. The engine roared to life and we tore out of the clearing, the forest's silence chasing us. I didn't look back, but I felt it. Those eyes, that presence, lingering at the edge of the trees watching us go. We fled Gordon Gulch as dawn broke, the mountains glowing red like a warning. We were out of that camp and back on the road by the time the sun broke over the horizon. Ethan huddled against me in the truck, clutching his blanket, his eyes red from crying. "Was it a bear, Daddy?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "He thinks I was chasing a bear away from camp." I forced a nod, my throat tight. "Just a bear, buddy." But my hands trembled on the wheel, the memory of those amber eyes searing my mind. Their glow burned into my vision like a brand. Back home, I spilled everything to my wife, Sarah. I told her about the laughter, the voice, the eyes that rose 10 feet into the night. Her face paled, her hands gripping the kitchen counter as I described the claw marks, the twisted twig. "You're sure it wasn't a dream?" she asked, her voice tight with fear. I pulled the twig's ashes from my pocket, still faintly reeking of decay, and she recoiled, gagging. "Get rid of it," she whispered, her eyes wide with something beyond fear, recognition maybe of a truth neither of us wanted to face. I burned the ashes in the backyard, watching the smoke curl into the sky, but the smell lingered, seeping into my nightmares, my waking hours, my bones. I have no idea what was in those woods. Was it a creature, a spirit, or something older? Something tied to the land itself? I couldn't stop replaying it. The laugh that wasn't Ethan's, the voice that wasn't Liam's, the eyes that weren't human. Ethan started waking at night, screaming about the tall thing with eyes, his small body shaking as he clung to me. I told him it was just a dream, but I stopped sleeping. Every shadow in the yard, every creak in the house, felt like it was back, waiting, watching. I checked the locks twice, kept the .45 by my bed, safety off. Sarah noticed the change in me, my silence, my jumpiness, the way I stared out the window at night, searching the dark for something I couldn't name. I tried to research Gordon Gulch, digging through old forums, local histories, anything that might explain what we'd faced. I found nothing concrete, just whispers of strange nights, hikers hearing voices, a vague mention of something that lingered in the pines. But the claw marks, the twig, the voice, they were real, physical, undeniable. I thought about Ethan's laughter, how pure it had been by the fire, how the thing in the woods had twisted it into something cruel. I thought about Liam, safe at home, his voice stolen by whatever stalked us. And I thought about myself, the man I'd been before that night, the outdoorsman who thought he could handle anything. That man was gone, replaced by someone who flinched at shadows, who saw amber, eyes in every dark corner. I plan to camp in that area again without my family, with friends, because I want to find out more about this thing. I need to know what it was, why it chose us, why it knew our names, but not yet. The thought of those woods, their silence, their weight, is too much. Ethan can't wait to camp again, his innocence untouched, his memory of that night blurred, into a story about Daddy scaring a bear. But I'm not ready. We stick to RV parks now, motels with bright lights and locked doors, places where the dark can't creep in. I keep the gun close, always loaded, just in case. And I can't shake the question that haunts me, the one that wakes me at 3 a.m., heart racing, searching the shadows. Did we escape? Or is it still out there waiting? Sometimes in the dead of night, I swear I hear Ethan laugh in his sleep, and something answers, soft and cold, from the darkness. Beyond our walls, the forest keeps its secrets, but it left me with one truth. Some things in the dark know your name, and once they do, they never forget. My wife's gasp stopped my heart mid-beat. I was folding laundry in our closet when she stumbled in, pale as death, pointing at the ceiling. She gasped and said, "Look up." The attic access, a dusty panel we'd never touched, was lifted, out of place and set ajar, a black void staring down at us. Someone had invaded our home, our safe suburban condo, and left no trace. Were they still there, hidden above us? This happened last summer, and it haunts me still. Weeks before, I had a dream about a similar situation a couple of weeks to a month or so ago. A voice whispering, "Is there someone inside your house?" Why did my mind predict this? Stick with me. This mystery will make you rethink what's hiding in your own home. It was a sticky July evening in Denver, the kind where the air feels like a warm blanket you can't shake off. Our condo, a tidy two-bedroom in a quiet suburban complex, was our haven. My wife, Emily, and I had settled here a year ago, drawn by the safe streets and good schools for our 4-year-old daughter, Lily. The place was warm, alive with lilies, crayon drawings on the fridge, the faint scent of Emily's lavender candles, and the constant patter of little feet. I was an IT consultant, working from home, my days split between coding, meetings, and folding endless piles of laundry. That night, I was in our walk-in closet sorting through clothes, the single bulb above casting soft shadows across the shelves. The closet was small, practical, with a square drywall panel in the ceiling, the attic access. I'd never given a thought, just another part of the condo's structure, sealed and unremarkable. Across the hall in the master bathroom, Emily was giving Lily her bath. I could hear Lily's laughter, her voice weaving a silly song about ducks and bubbles, and Emily's patient replies. It was one of those moments you want to freeze, a snapshot of everything being right in the world. But then Emily's voice shattered the calm. "Tom," she called, sharp and panicked. "Get in here now!" I dropped the shirt I was folding and crossed the hall in 2 strides, my pulse spiking. Lily was still splashing in the tub, oblivious. But Emily stood in the bathroom doorway, her face drained of color, her eyes fixed on the closet ceiling. She gasped and said, "Look up." I followed her gaze, and my breath caught in my throat. The entry point drywall lid was lifted out of place and set ajar, tilted just enough to reveal a sliver of darkness above. Dust drifted in the dim light, and a faint musty smell hit me, like damp wood left too long in the shadows. This evening, whilst putting away some clothes in my closet, I noticed the entry point to my attic had been disturbed and set ajar. I later wrote in my journal, trying to make sense of it. "Emily, that wasn't like that this morning," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She nodded, her hands trembling. I'd been in the closet just hours ago, grabbing a pair of socks, and the ceiling had been seamless. Now it was unmistakably tampered with. The lid shifted as if someone had lifted it with care and set it aside. My mind raced. A maintenance worker? A neighbor? We shared walls with other condos, but our attic was isolated. No one had access. And why would they touch it without telling us? "Stay with Lily," I told Emily, trying to keep my fear in check. My heart was hammering, but I couldn't let her see how shaken I was. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, its weight a small anchor as I returned to the closet. Standing beneath the opening, I shone the beam into the void. The light caught bits of insulation, a few stray nails, but nothing else. No footprints, no signs of movement. Just a thick, heavy silence that seemed to press against my ears. "Hello?" I called, my voice sounding small in the darkness. No answer, just the faint drip of bathwater and Lily's humming, a jarring contrast to the tension gripping me. I wanted to climb up to check every corner of that attic, but something stopped me. A gut feeling, sharp and insistent, that told me to stay put. Instead, I dragged a chair from the bedroom and stood on it, craning my neck to see more. The attic looked empty, but the air was stale, almost suffocating. The creepiest part or thing that bothers me, though, is that I don't know if it was moved from inside the attic or from my closet below, I thought, the uncertainty gnawing at me. I stepped down, my hands clammy. "We're calling the police," I said, pulling out my phone, my fingers already dialing 911. I dialed 911, my fingers shaking as I pressed the keys. The operator's voice was calm, professional, but it did little to ease the knot in my chest. "There's an attic access in our closet," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. I dialed 911 while my wife and child went downstairs in a hurry. "It's been opened, not like that before. I think someone's been in our house." Emily stood in the bathroom doorway, clutching Lily, who was wrapped in a towel, her wet hair dripping onto the floor. "Please, hurry," I added, my eyes locked on the attic opening. Every creak of the condo, every gust of wind outside felt like a warning that someone was still here, lurking just out of sight. The operator promised a patrol car within 10 minutes. 10 minutes felt like an eternity. My wife and child went downstairs in a hurry. She got the both of them ready while I stayed on guard, watching the entry to the attic crawl space. I explained to the operator, my voice tight with urgency. I ushered Emily and Lily downstairs to the living room, locking the bedroom door behind us. The lock was flimsy, barely a barrier, but it was all we had. Emily's hands trembled as she pulled a sweater over Lily's damp shoulders, her eyes darting to the ceiling as if expecting someone to crash through. "What if they're still up there?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over Lily's confused questions. "Daddy, why are we downstairs?" Lily asked, clutching her rubber duck, her innocence a painful contrast to the fear gripping us. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the block, its weight a small comfort, and stood at the base of the stairs, flashlight in my other hand. The condo, once our safe space, now felt like a maze of shadows. Every corner seemed to hide a threat, every sound a potential intruder. I kept replaying the moment I'd shown the flashlight into the attic. Had I missed something? A scuff mark? A tool? Anything to explain how that lid had moved? The rational part of me wanted to blame a loose panel, but the primal part, the one gripping the knife, knew better. It wasn't bumped or hit by myself or my wife, and my child is not able to get anywhere near the access point. Plus, it was like off and moved. Not sort of like gently buffered by the wind or anything. I thought, the deliberate nature of it, chilling me. The police arrived after what felt like forever, their headlights cutting through the dusk outside. 2 officers, a tall man with a buzz cut and a shorter woman with a tight bun, stepped inside, their radios crackling. I led them to the closet, explaining the situation. "The attic access is open," I said, pointing to the ceiling. "It wasn't like that this morning." The male officer nodded, climbing a stepladder we'd dragged from the garage, his flashlight sweeping the attic. Emily stood behind me, holding Lily, who was now half asleep in her arms. The wait was excruciating, each second stretching into minutes. Finally, the officer climbed down, his face unreadable. "Police showed up after what I felt like an eternity and checked up there but couldn't find anything," he said, dusting off his hands. "No signs of forced entry or anything, just an obviously lifted up and placed ajar crawl space cover. Police said the drywall that connects up there wasn't broken or cut open or anything. Again, I live in a condo with neighbors on both sides. and there was no signs of disturbed fiberglass near the entry or around my closet. So no one was obviously, crawling around or messing with stuff up there at least. He added, his tone professional but tinged with skepticism. You sure it wasn't loose before? He asked, eyeing me. I'm sure, I said, frustration creeping in. Emily nodded, her arms tightening around Lily. The female officer suggested it could have been a maintenance error or a neighbor's mistake, but that didn't add up. Our attic was isolated, not connected to other units. We'll file a report, she said, handing me a card. Call if anything else happens. They left, their patrol car fading into the night, leaving us with more questions than answers. The silence that followed was suffocating. Emily carried Lily to bed, her face a mask of forced calm as she tucked her in. I stayed downstairs, the knife still on the coffee table, my eyes fixed on the staircase. I am seriously thinking about somehow placing a lock on the entry point, I told Emily when she returned, but the words felt futile. I'm not good with that kind of handiwork and wouldn't really even know how to begin cutting or making a sturdier lid, or access to even try to put a lock on one. I admitted, the helplessness stinging. Someone had been in our home, and the lack of evidence only deepened the violation. Who would do this? Why? The uncertainty was a weight I couldn't shake. I paced the living room, checking the windows, testing the front door lock. The condo felt exposed, its walls too thin, its corners too dark. Emily sat on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest. What do we do now? She asked, her voice small. I didn't know. The police had found nothing, but that only deepened the mystery. Someone had moved that lid with purpose, and the thought that they could come back kept me awake, staring at the ceiling, long after Emily had gone to bed. The next morning, the condo felt like a stranger's house. The sunlight streaming through the windows should have been reassuring, but it only mocked the fear that had settled into our lives. Emily was quiet, her eyes shadowed from a sleepless night, her movements slow as she poured coffee. Lily played in the living room, stacking blocks, but even her chatter was subdued, as if she sensed the weight pressing down on us. I tried to focus on work, opening my laptop, but my mind was upstairs in that closet staring at that damned attic lid. I couldn't let it go. I am seriously thinking about somehow placing a lock on the entry point, I'd told Emily. And by noon, I was on the phone with a locksmith. I am seriously thinking about somehow placing a lock on the entry point, but I'm not good with that kind of handiwork, and wouldn't really even know how to begin cutting or making a sturdier lid, or access to even try to put a lock on one. I explained to the locksmith, a gruff man named Mike who arrived that afternoon. He inspected the drywall panel, his brow furrowing. This is a heavy piece, he said, tapping it. Not something that'd just shift on its own. Someone had to move it with purpose. His words hit like a cold wave. Purpose. The idea that someone had stood in our closet planning this intrusion made my stomach churn. Mike installed a deadbolt, its metal gleaming against the dusty ceiling. Check your security system, he advised as he packed up. This wasn't random. His warning lingered as I stood in the closet staring at the new lock. It should have felt like a victory, but it didn't. It felt like we were sealing ourselves in with the fear. I spent the afternoon testing our alarm system, door sensors, window contacts, the works. It hadn't gone off the night before, which only deepened my unease. Had someone bypassed it? Or had they been inside before we even armed it? I checked every lock, every window, my hands moving on autopilot. Emily was a wreck, jumping at every sound, a car door, a neighbor's dog, the hum of the AC. What if they come back? She asked, her voice low so Lily wouldn't hear. I wanted to reassure her, to say the lock would keep us safe, but the words felt empty. The police had found nothing. No footprints, no tools, no answers. No one was obviously crawling around or messing with stuff up there, at least. I kept reminding myself, clinging to the officer's words, but they offered little comfort. The absence of evidence was its own kind of terror, a blank space where answers should have been. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a memory hit me like a jolt. I had a dream about a similar situation a couple of weeks to a month or so ago. In my dream, a woman called me seemingly on a random day and said bluntly, "Is there someone inside your house?" I'd woken up in a cold sweat, my heart racing, dismissing it as a stress dream. Now it felt like a warning I'd ignored. I turned to Emily, who was still awake, her eyes fixed on the dark. "Did you ever have a weird dream about the house?" I asked. She nodded, her voice barely audible. "I can't remember if we found anyone or anything in that day in my dream, but yeah, it's been a really strange night to say the least," she said, describing a dream where someone stood in the attic watching us sleep. The coincidence was chilling, like a puzzle piece snapping into place. Two dreams, weeks apart, both pointing to the same fear. Had our subconscious caught something we missed? A sound, a feeling. I wasn't one for premonitions, but this was too strange to ignore. I got up, unable to stay still, and checked the attic lock again. The closet was silent, the deadbolt secure, but the air felt heavy, almost oppressive. For a moment I swore I heard a faint creak from above, like wood settling under weight. I froze listening, but it didn't come again. Just my mind, I told myself. But as I stood there, flashlight in hand, I wasn't so sure. Weeks passed, but the fear never left. We installed a full security system. Cameras on every door, motion sensors in the hallways, a panic button by the bed. The attic lock stayed in place, a daily reminder of our vulnerability. I checked it every night, a ritual born of paranoia. Emily started triple-checking the doors, her fingers lingering on the locks as if they could keep out the dread. Lily went back to her cheerful self, drawing rainbows and singing about bubbles. But sometimes she'd pause, look up and ask, "Daddy, is the ceiling safe?" Her innocence broke my heart. How do you tell a 4-year-old her home might not be secure? I dug into the condo's history, desperate for answers. The complex was new, built a decade ago with no record of break-ins. Our neighbors, a retired couple and a young family, hadn't noticed anything odd. I asked the property manager, Karen, about maintenance logs. "I don't believe the attic connects with any other condo, but we do share walls with neighbors on both sides," I told her, hoping for clarity. "Nobody's been in your attic," she said, her tone brisk. "It's not on our access list." Her words should have reassured me, but they didn't. Someone had moved that lid, and the lack of evidence only deepened the mystery. I scoured online forums, searching for similar stories. Most were dead ends, loose panels, raccoons, but a few mentioned unexplained attic disturbances. Lids moved, with no signs of entry. One user wrote about a feeling of being watched after finding their attic ajar. Their post ended abruptly, no follow-up. It wasn't much, but it fueled my obsession. I started a journal, noting every odd sound. A creak at 2 a.m., a flicker of light in the closet. Each entry was a piece of a puzzle I couldn't solve. The dreams kept coming, sharper each time. In one, I stood in the closet, the attic lid open, eyes staring from the darkness. In another, that woman's voice whispered, "They know where you live." Emily's dreams grew darker too. She'd wake gasping, describing a figure at the foot of our bed. We stopped sharing them, as if silence could banish the fear, but it was a constant shadow, a weight in our bones. Now we're packing to move. Not because of another incident, there hasn't been one, but because the condo isn't ours anymore. Every creak is a threat, every shadow a reminder. I lie awake wondering, who was in our attic? A thief? A prankster? Why the dreams? The police report sits in a drawer, useless. I know that this may not be considered paranormal to most, but weirdly, I had a dream about a similar situation a couple of weeks to a month or so ago. I wrote in my journal, still grappling with the coincidence. Thanks for listening, and if you have any advice on my situation, then that would be greatly appreciated. So, I'm asking you, what would you do if your home became a mystery? Would you stay, chasing answers, no matter the cost? Or run, praying? The fear doesn't follow? Share your thoughts below. Have you ever felt your sanctuary turn into a question mark? Your story might help us find peace. In 1994, my family stepped into a house that didn't want us, its walls alive with secrets too dark to name. We bought a 250-year-old farmhouse in rural southwest England, abandoned for decades, its rooms choked with dust, broken chairs, and faded curtains. The staircase held a chilling welcome. Small, tattered ropes, knotted and worn, dangling like grim relics of a cruel past, their frayed ends swaying in the draft. From the first night, the air felt wrong. Thick, heavy, as if something unseen watched our every move, its presence a cold finger tracing my spine. My parents dreamed of a fresh start, a rural haven for their kids. I sensed a nightmare, a trap we couldn't escape, its jaws already closing. I was 6, my brother 4. Both of us thrilled by the sprawling fields and crumbling barns that stretched beyond the farmhouse. To us, it was a playground, its sagging. Beams and cracked windows an adventure, each creak a call to explore. Mom and Dad, worn from years of city chaos, endless moves for Dad's job, saw it as salvation, a place to plant roots, raise us in peace, far from concrete and clamor. But the house had other plans, its pulse hidden in the groans of ancient wood. That first evening, as we unpacked in the flickering kitchen light, a sharp thud echoed from upstairs, like a heavy door slamming shut. "Old houses," Dad said, his voice trembling, his eyes scanning the ceiling, his hand tightening on a mug. Mom gripped a box of dishes, her knuckles white, her smile forced. We all felt it. We weren't alone. The house's silence a lie masking something awake. My bedroom, tucked at the end of a long, dark hall, was the worst. It felt tense, like a storm brewing, the air pressing against my chest, making every breath a struggle. I lay awake, staring at shadows that seemed to shift, my heart pounding in the quiet. Around 2 a.m., a sound shattered the silence. A loud bang, like furniture crashing to the floor, shaking the walls, rattling the window panes. I froze, clutching my thin blanket, waiting for more, my ears straining. Nothing came, but the silence was worse, heavy with intent, a presence that pressed against my skin like damp cloth. I crept to the door, peering into the hallway, its length, a void swallowed by shadow. No one was there, yet the feeling of being watched clung to me, a cold dread I couldn't shake, a certainty that something waited just out of sight. Morning offered no comfort, the house's weight lingering, its air thick with unease. Mom found a rusted spoon on the kitchen counter, not ours, its handle bent as if twisted by force. "Left behind," she said, but tossed it into the bin, her hands unsteady, her eyes darting to the corners. Dad explored the attic, muttering about broken chairs and a sealed trunk, its iron cold and unyielding. He returned, pale, avoiding the attic after that, his usual confidence shaken. The house played subtle tricks at first, testing our resolve. My pencil case vanished from my desk, reappearing in the pantry, its zipper jammed. My brother's favorite shoe, left by the front door, turned up in the damp cellar, caked in mud. We blamed each other, forcing laughs, but the laughter grew hollow, our voices echoing in the vast, empty rooms, the house listening. Then came the footsteps, heavy, deliberate, racing down the hallway at night, their echo like a heartbeat in the dark, uneven and urgent. I'd lie awake, counting them, 8, 10, always stopping just outside my door, the wood creaking under an unseen weight. The air turned cold, my breath clouding in the moonlight, the room a freezer despite summer's warmth. One night, a icy creak sounded inches from my bed, as if someone stood there watching, their presence a shadow I couldn't see. I didn't scream, didn't move, just prayed for dawn, my heart pounding so loud I feared the house could hear it. The farmhouse wasn't just old, it was alive, and it knew our fears, weaving them into its walls, its games growing sharper, more personal. The days blurred, each one heavier, the house's gaze unrelenting. Mom stopped humming as she cooked, her hands hesitating over knives as if expecting them to move on their own. Dad's jokes dried up, replaced by a furrowed brow and a habit of checking locks twice, his fingers lingering on the bolts. My brother clung to me, his usual chatter silenced, his eyes wide with questions he didn't dare ask. The farmhouse was no longer a home but a battlefield, and we were losing ground, our sanity fraying under its relentless pressure, its presence a poison seeping through every crack. The farmhouse didn't just haunt us, it hunted us, its presence growing bolder, its games crueler, as if testing how much we could endure. Loud bangs echoed at all hours, like doors slamming or shelves collapsing, shaking the house, but we'd find nothing disturbed, the dust untouched, the rooms mocking our search. Footsteps tore down the hallway, faster, heavier, as if something raged through the house, their sound shaking my bones, their echo lingering like a threat. The air grew cold, not just in my room but everywhere. Kitchen, living room, stairs, chilling us to the core, our breaths visible in the dim light, our skin prickling. Mom's forced smiles faded, her laughter gone. Dad's flashlight checks became frantic, his beam chasing shadows that vanished when he turned. We were unraveling, the house stripping us bare, its victory close. One night, my grandparents house sat while my parents attended a town meeting, their voices strained as they left, their hope thinning. My grandparents, tough from years of farming, checked each room, their steps steady, but when they opened the guest room door they stopped dead, their faces pale, their breaths sharp. A thick swirling mist filled the space, moving like a living thing coiling in the air, though the windows were sealed tight. The night outside clear and starlit. My grandfather, a man who'd faced blizzards without flinching, grabbed my grandmother's arm and fled, refusing to return until dawn's light banished the shadows. They told us over breakfast, their voices low, their hands unsteady. Mom's hands shook, spilling coffee, her eyes fixed on the hall. "We can't stay like this," she said, her voice cracking, her resolve breaking. The bangs intensified after that, rattling windows, knocking books off shelves, their spines splitting. On the floor, a mirror in the dining room cracked overnight, its fracture spiderwebbing, reflecting our fractured nerves. My brother clung to me, whispering about a shadow in his closet, its shape vague but heavy, its presence a weight he couldn't name. My room was a prison, its tension suffocating, like hands pressing my chest, stealing my breath. I slept downstairs, curled on the couch, but the house followed me. One night, A vase tipped over as I passed, slow, deliberate, its crash a warning, its shards glinting in the moonlight. We were unwanted, and the house was done pretending, its patience gone. Mom called a priest, Father Michael, a stern man with a worn Bible and tired eyes. He walked through the house sprinkling holy water, his prayers steady, but his hands trembled, his voice faltering on the Latin. In my room, he stopped, his face ashen, sweat beading on his brow, his breath ragged. "There's a darkness here, something heavy," he said, his voice low, urgent, his eyes wide with fear. "I can't stay. I don't know what to do for you." He hurried out, his car kicking up dust as he sped down the dirt road, leaving Mom frozen in the doorway, her hands clutching the frame, her hope crumbling. The priest had seen what we felt, and he'd run, abandoning us to the house's wrath, his Bible useless against its power. That night, the house fought back, its anger unleashed. Footsteps thundered, not just in the hallway but from the walls, the ceiling, everywhere. A cacophony of rage, their rhythm chaotic like a storm breaking loose. A low hum vibrated, not sound but feeling, like the house itself groaned, its wood alive with fury. I hid with my brother, our breaths shallow, our bodies pressed together, praying it would stop. Our fear a prayer unanswered. The farmhouse wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and it hated us. Its wrath a force we couldn't fight. Its presence a cage we couldn't escape. The priest's escape broke us. The farmhouse's shadow swallowing our hope. Its presence a weight we couldn't bear. We lived on edge, flinching at every sound. Our eyes hollow from sleepless nights, our nerves raw. My room was a void, its tension a constant weight, like unseen eyes tracking my every move, their gaze cold and unyielding. Mom stopped talking, her hands clutching a cold tea mug, her eyes red from silent tears. Dad's plans to sell the farm faded. Renovations had drained our savings, chaining us to this haunted place, its walls our prison. The house knew, its silence mocking our despair, its air thick with victory. Mom found a medium, Mrs. Ellis, through a whispered tip from a neighbor, a desperate grasp at salvation. She arrived on a foggy morning, her presence calm, her eyes sharp, cutting through the house's gloom like a blade. She paced the rooms, her steps deliberate, lingering in my room, her hand resting on the door frame, her brow furrowed. "Something's here tied to this place," she said, her voice steady but heavy. "Don't fight it, accept it, and it'll ease." We listened, clinging to her words like a lifeline, our fear outweighing our doubt. The disturbances slowed, the loud bangs gone, the footsteps silent, the cold air warming as if the house had heard her, its anger softening. But the house still watched, its peace fragile, like a held breath, its presence a shadow we couldn't shake. The calm was uneasy, a truce we didn't trust. My room stayed heavy, its tension softer but present, a reminder of the house's power. I slept in the hall, avoiding its pull, but found a child's ring on my pillow one morning, old and tarnished. It's metal cold, not ours. Mom tossed it into the yard, her face pale, her hands trembling. But we didn't speak of it, our silence a pact against the house's games. The house was quieter, but not gone, its presence a faint pulse, a heartbeat in the walls. Renovations pushed on, Dad's crew clearing decades of debris, their laughter forced, their eyes darting to corners as they worked. Sensing what we knew, they burned the old junk in a massive bonfire in the yard, flames roaring for days, devouring splintered furniture, moth-eaten clothes, and faded photographs, the smoke thick, blotting out the sun. When the fire died, only Ash remained, a gray sea of loss stretching across the field. Then Mom saw it, her gasp cutting through the morning chill. An envelope untouched in the ash's heart, its paper pristine, with a purple stone inside, gleaming, unburned, defying the flames that consumed everything else. She opened it, her breath catching, her fingers trembling. The letter from the 1960s mourned a girl, 18, who ended her life in my room, her pain a wound the house had never healed. The stone, her treasure, was a piece of her, left behind, its glow a cry from the past. Her story hit us hard, her sorrow explaining the house's weight, its anger, its relentless grip. The unburned letter and purple stone were the farmhouse's confession, a truth it could no longer hide, a crack in its armor. The letter, penned by a grieving friend, spoke of a girl, 18, who took her life in my room in 1962, her spirit bound to the house, her pain its pulse. It described her love for the farm's rolling fields, her quiet joy in its seasons, and a loss that broke her, though it didn't name what stole her light. The stone, her cherished keepsake, glowed in our hands, its purple facets warm, a fragment of her soul left behind. My room's tension made sense. Her pain lingered, a scar in the walls, the floor, the air we breathed, a weight we'd all felt from the first night. We gathered in the dim kitchen that evening, the letter spread open. On the table, the stone catching the flickering light of a single bulb. Mom's voice shook as she read, her eyes wet, her words faltering on the girl's sorrow. Dad gripped his chair, silent, his face tight, his usual strength crumbling under the weight of her story. My brother drew closer, sensing the heaviness, his small hand on Mom's, his eyes wide but gentle. The house was still, its silence different now, not threatening but heavy, as if listening. Her story wrapped us, her sorrow a mirror to our own fear, our own fragility, binding us to her, to the house. We didn't know her, but we carried her pain, the farmhouse forcing us to feel it, its walls echoing her grief. I avoided my room after that, camping on the living room couch, but the tension followed, softer, like a whisper, a presence no longer angry but sad. One night, a cold air swept through, chilling my skin, the stone warm in my hand as I clutched it. I whispered, "Why are you here?" My voice barely audible, my heart pounding. The house creaked as if answering but gave no clarity, its response a sigh in the wood. The letter left us with questions. Why her death? What loss drove her to that final act? We had no records, no family to ask. Only her pain, etched in ink and stone. A mystery we couldn't solve. The letter's survival haunted us, a miracle that defied reason. How had it, and the stone, escaped flames that devoured oak and cloth, leaving nothing but ash? Mrs. Ellis, when Mom called her, listened quietly, then said the girl's spirit guarded them, a final act to be known, to be remembered. We placed the stone on a shelf in the living room, its glow a quiet memorial, a beacon for her memory. We didn't pray or hold seances. We weren't that family, but we honored her, speaking her story, hoping she'd feel our care, hoping she'd rest, her pain eased by our acknowledgement. The letter and purple stone freed the farmhouse, its darkness lifting like fog at dawn, its walls no longer a cage but a home. The loud bangs stopped, the footsteps faded, the cold air warmed as if the girl's story had been enough. Her pain heard, her presence acknowledged. My room shed its tension, its walls soft, almost welcoming, the air light, breathable. The stone sat on a shelf, its glow dim but steady, a tribute to the girl whose life had shaped the house, whose sorrow had defined it. The farmhouse was at peace, its anger gone, its truth told. We'd faced its terror and found its heart, a story of loss that bound us to it. We stayed 6 years, the farm our home, its scars part of us, its history woven into our own. Mom kept the letter in a drawer, reading it sometimes, her voice steady now, her tears fewer. Dad finished the renovations. His hammer strikes a claim on our space, his pride returning as the house took shape, its walls strong, its windows bright. My brother played outside, fearless, the fields his again, his laughter echoing where fear once ruled. I slept in my room, the stone nearby, its presence calm, a quiet guardian. The house was ours, shared with her memory, a guest we'd learned to live with, her story a thread in our lives. In 2000, we left, life pulling us away, our family shifting under strains unrelated to the house. We gave the letter and stone to the new owners, a young couple eager to restore the farm, their eyes bright with plans. "She's part of this place," Mom said, her voice firm, her eyes misty, handing them the envelope and stone. They nodded, touched by the girl's story, promising to keep them safe, to honor her memory, to tend the fields she'd loved. Years later, I heard the letter was archived in the village's small historical collection. Her story preserved, no longer hidden in ash, no longer a secret buried in the house's bones. Looking back, the farmhouse taught me fear, but also truth, a lesson carved into my soul. The girl wasn't a ghost to haunt us. She was a soul broken by life, reaching out through time, her pain a cry we answered. Her unburned letter was her voice, her purple stone her light, and we listened, carrying her story forward. That's what stays with me. Not the bangs or footsteps, but her truth. A piece of my own. A reminder that even in the darkest places there's a human heart, waiting to be heard, waiting to be known. Sarah froze in her daughter's doorway, heart pounding. It was 3 p.m., a quiet October afternoon, yet 7-year-old Lily sat on her bed, tears streaming, clutching a photo of her Uncle Jake. "I miss Uncle Jake," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "He's gone, Mommy, I know he's gone." Sarah knelt, confused. Lily hadn't seen Jake in months. Why this sudden grief? Hours later, the phone rang. Jake, 28, had been murdered in a brutal robbery 50 miles away, his life snuffed out that very morning. Lily's tears weren't just childish whims. They were a chilling premonition, the first of many that would haunt our family, as if Jake's spirit was reaching out to say goodbye. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Thompsons were a close-knit clan in rural Wisconsin, rooted in the rhythms of small-town life. Church suppers, county fairs, and long talks over coffee. Jake was our spark, the cousin who'd breeze into town with stories of far-off places, his laugh infectious. His nieces and nephews adored him, especially the kids, who'd beg for one more tale before he left. But that fall, Jake had been distant. His calls brief, his visits rare. We thought he was just busy, caught up in his chaotic life. We never imagined he was slipping away. The day of Jake's death, our family home, a creaky, century-old farmhouse, felt wrong. The air was heavy, like a storm was brewing inside the walls. Lights dimmed for no reason, and a faint hum seemed to pulse through the floorboards. My sister Sarah, Lily's mom, tried to stay calm, but she admitted later that she felt watched, as if someone stood just out of sight. My brother Tom, usually the skeptic, kept glancing over his shoulder, uneasy. We didn't talk about it then, too shaken by the news of Jake's death, but the signs were there, subtle and unsettling. Lily's premonition was only the beginning. Out of the blue, my nephew Ethan, 10 years old, started yelling, "No, I don't want anyone from my family to die." He was in the backyard kicking a soccer ball when he froze, eyes wide with terror. His dad, Mark, ran to him asking what was wrong. Ethan couldn't explain, just kept repeating those words, his voice raw. It was as if he was sensing something we couldn't, a warning from beyond. Mark held him until he quieted, but the fear in Ethan's eyes lingered. That night we learned of Jake's murder, and Ethan's outburst became a piece of a larger, eerie puzzle. The days that followed were a haze of grief. We gathered at the farmhouse, trying to make sense of Jake's death. The police said it was a robbery gone wrong, but the details were vague. An alley, a struggle, no suspects. We clung to memories of Jake, his crooked smile, his knack for making the kids laugh. Yet, the house seemed to mourn with us. Doors we'd locked swung open at night. A faint tapping echoed from the attic, too rhythmic to be the wind. It was as though Jake was saying a final goodbye to the newest generation of our family, his presence lingering in the spaces he'd once filled. The kids felt it most. My niece Emma, 14, had a chilling encounter the night Jake was murdered. She woke to a shadow darting across her room, a swift, unexplainable presence that sent shivers down her spine. It wasn't just a trick of light. It lingered cold and heavy before vanishing through the wall. Emma swore she heard a whisper, "I'm sorry." She lay frozen, heart racing, too scared to scream. The next morning, she told us, her voice trembling, and we saw the fear in her eyes. It wasn't imagination. Something had been there, something tied to Jake. Sarah tried to keep things normal, but the kids were shaken. Lily stopped playing outside, clutching Jake's photo like a lifeline. Ethan grew quiet, staring at the ceiling as if listening for something. Emma started sleeping with the lights on, haunted by that shadow. My sister-in-law, Rachel, usually the calm one, admitted she felt uneasy in the house, like eyes followed her down the hall. Even Tom, who'd roll his eyes at ghost stories, stopped joking. "It's like he's still here," he muttered, and we all nodded, unable to deny it. The strangest moment came a week later, during Jake's memorial. We'd set up a table with his photos, his favorite baseball cap, and letters from friends. As we shared stories, the room grew cold, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones. A candle flickered, though no windows were open. Then, Lily gasped, pointing at the table. Jake's cap had moved, slid a foot to the right, as if nudged by an unseen hand. We stared, silent, hearts pounding. Sarah whispered, "Is that you, Jake?" The candle flared, then went out, leaving us in darkness. That night, Emma had a dream. She saw Jake standing in a misty field, his face sad but calm. He didn't speak, just reached out, his hand brushing hers. When she woke, her palm was cold, and a faint mark like a fingerprint lingered on her skin for hours. She showed us her eyes wide, and we didn't know what to say. We couldn't help but wonder if these strange occurrences were connected to Jake's murder, as if his spirit was caught, trying to reach us one last time. The signs didn't stop. Ethan started waking at 3 a.m., claiming he heard Jake's voice calling his name. He'd run, to Mark trembling, saying, "Uncle Jake wants me to know he's okay." Lily drew pictures of Jake, always with a faint shadow behind him, her crayons pressing so hard the paper tore. Emma kept a journal, writing down every odd feeling, every whisper. She described a moment in the bathroom when the mirror fogged. Up and in the mist, she saw Jake's face for a split second, his eyes pleading. She ran out, screaming, and didn't look in a mirror for days. We tried to explain it away, grief, stress, the power of suggestion. But the coincidences piled up. My cousin Laura, who lived across town, called one night, shaken. She'd found a voicemail from Jake left the day he died, but her phone hadn't rung. It was just his voice, faint and garbled, saying, Love you all. When she played it for us, the static made our skin crawl, but his words were clear. How could a dead man leave a message? It was as if the boundaries between this world and the next were thinner than we thought, and Jake was slipping through the cracks. The farmhouse became unbearable. Every creak felt like a step, every shadow a threat. Sarah moved the kids to her in-laws' house, hoping distance would help. It didn't. Lily woke one night screaming that Jake was at her window, his face pressed against the glass. Ethan refused to sleep alone, saying he felt Jake's hand on his shoulder in the dark. Emma started hearing whispers in her dreams, always the same. I'm here. We gathered at the new house, trading stories, trying to understand. These unexplained phenomena only added to the mystery, pulling us deeper into a truth we couldn't grasp. The final sign came a month later. We'd packed up Jake's things, donating most to charity, but kept a box of his favorites, his cap, a watch, a worn journal. One night I opened the box to find the journal open, a page marked with a photo of Jake and the kids smiling at a fair. On the page, in Jake's handwriting, was a note we'd never seen. Take care of them. It wasn't there before. We'd checked every page. My hands shook as I showed the family. Sarah cried, Tom stared, and the kids clung to us, wide-eyed. We never found answers. The police closed Jake's case, calling it unsolvable. The signs faded, the house quieted, but the weight of Jake's presence stayed. It was as though he visited each of them before departing this world in a really tragic way, leaving a piece of himself in their hearts. Lily still talks about him, saying he's watching from the stars. Ethan keeps his toy car close, a reminder of his uncle. Emma writes about him, her words a bridge to the brother she lost. Some nights when the wind howls, I feel him, a fleeting chill, a whisper in the dark. Is Jake still out there, guarding us? Or is it just grief playing tricks on a broken heart? It almost felt as though he was saying a final goodbye to the newest generation of our family, his love echoing across the divide. The line between this world and the next is fragile, and Jake's story, unfinished, lives in us all. It's 10 p.m. in a deserted tram station in Eastern Europe, 2010. The air is thick with silence, broken only by the faint buzz of a dying street lamp. I'm 16, alone, waiting for the last tram home, my phone clinging to its final percent of battery. Then I feel it, a cold, creeping dread, like a shadow slithering up my spine. I look up and there he is, a massive man standing too close, his eyes boring into me with a hunger that stops my breath. This isn't a random encounter. This is a predator and I'm his prey. My heart pounds. I'm trapped with no one around, no way to call for help, and a sinking realization. If I don't outsmart him, I might not make it home tonight. I was a shy kid back then, always wandering the city after dark, drawn to its quiet corners. That night, I sat at the tram station, lost in thought, unaware of the danger creeping closer. I barely registered a man quietly walking up and standing by the shelter. I didn't think anything of it, just somebody else waiting for the tram, like me, until I started feeling weird. The streets were empty, the darkness swallowing everything beyond the platform's weak light. Why was he standing so close when the whole station was deserted? I stole a glance. He was a giant, bald, built like a bear with a belly that strained his jacket and arms that could crush me without effort. He was staring right at me, unblinking and expressionless, not even attempting to look away. His eyes were small, beady, glinting with something dark, something that made my skin crawl. My hands trembled as I gripped my phone, its battery icon flashing red. I was 5'2", scrawny, no match for this guy. Walking home wasn't an option. Dark alleys filled with junkies and worse waited beyond the station. The last tram was my only lifeline, but every second with him felt like a step closer to disaster. I only managed to utter a small "hi," trying my best to startle him out of whatever he was thinking, but my attempts failed in the face of his silent, threatening aura. He didn't blink, didn't speak, just tilted his head slightly, like a wolf sizing up a lamb. My stomach churned. This wasn't a misunderstanding. He was enjoying my fear, feeding on it. I forced myself to think. Panicking wouldn't help. I couldn't fight him. His size alone guaranteed that. Running was pointless. His long legs would catch me in seconds. Calling someone? My phone was useless. I scanned the station, searching for anything. A security camera, another person, a way out. Nothing, just me, him, and the suffocating quiet. Then the first tram's headlights pierced the darkness, rumbling toward the platform. It was one I could take, but it stopped right in my neighborhood. If he followed me, he'd know where I lived. I held my breath, praying he'd board and disappear. He kept watching me carefully instead. My heart sank. This was no coincidence. He wasn't here for the tram. He was here for me, and the game had just begun. The tram's doors hissed shut, and the carriage lurched forward, its wheels screeching against the tracks. I sat by the door, my heart hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it. I'd taken a gamble boarding this tram, the one that didn't go to my neighborhood, hoping to throw him off. But as I glanced back, my worst fear materialized. He got on it too, but sat himself at the back pretty far from where I was. His massive frame filled the seat. His eyes still locked on me, unyielding, like a hunter tracking a deer through the forest. The tram's fluorescent lights flickered, casting shadows that danced across his face, making his smirk even more sinister. I gripped the edge of my seat, my knuckles white. This wasn't over. He wasn't letting me go. The carriage was nearly empty. Just an old woman dozing in the corner and a guy in headphones lost in his music. No one noticed the silent war unfolding between me and this stranger. I tried to steady my breathing, to think. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking that this might still go well, but it was a fleeting hope. The tram rattled on, and every second felt like a countdown. I needed a plan, something to outsmart him. My phone was dead now, its screen black. Useless. I couldn't call for help, couldn't run. The next station was coming up, and I had to decide, stay on or get off. If I got off, would he follow? If I stayed, would he close the distance? I scanned the tram, searching for anything to, the doors had buttons to open them manually. Maybe I could time my exit perfectly, slip out at the last second. But his eyes never left me, tracking every twitch, every glance. When the tram reached the next station, I got up and out, not looking back, hoping that it was all over. My sneakers hit the pavement, and I forced myself to walk calmly, blending into the shadows of the platform. The tram's doors stayed open, its engine humming. I dared to hope he'd stayed behind. But then, a heavy thud echoed behind me, boots on concrete. I turned, and there he was, stepping off the tram, his silhouette towering under the station's dim lights. I turned my head slowly and was terrified to see him walking towards me, looking slightly ticked off. My stomach dropped. He wasn't just following me now. He was angry. His steps deliberate, his smirk gone. The station was deserted. The ticket booth shuttered, the streets beyond swallowed by darkness. I backed away, my mind racing. He was maybe 10 steps away, closing the gap with terrifying ease. This time, with a clear hint of malice, still in silence, he tilted his head again, his eyes glinting like a predator's in the moonlight. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry. Crying wouldn't help. Running might only provoke him. I needed to be smarter, to use the city against him. Then, a distant rumble. Another tram approaching, the last one that could take me home. My pulse surged. This was my chance, but it was also a trap. If he boarded with me, I'd be stuck in a confined space with him, nowhere to hide. I had to act fast. As the tram's headlights grew brighter, I edged toward the platform's far end, keeping him in my peripheral vision. He slowed, watching, calculating. The tram screeched to a stop, its doors sliding open. I took a deep breath, my mind sharpening. This wasn't just about escape anymore, it was about survival. I had 3 stops to outwit him, 3 chances to make it home alive. The tram's interior felt like a cage, its walls closing in with every second. I sat at the front, my eyes darting between the doors and the man 2 rows behind me. He was not taking any chances now, sitting right behind me, making sure I won't try anything like last time. His presence was a weight, pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe. The tram's hum was drowned out by the thud of my pulse. I had 3 stops to figure this out. 3 stops to outsmart a predator who seemed to know my every move. My mind raced, piecing together a plan. I couldn't let him follow me home. I couldn't let him win. I glanced at the driver, an older man with gray hair, his eyes fixed on the tracks ahead, oblivious to the danger behind him. No help there. The other passengers, a handful now, were too absorbed in their own worlds to notice my panic. I needed to act normal, to hide my fear, but every fiber of my body screamed to run. I shot him a hateful glare and allowed my anger to overcome my fear. It was a small act of defiance, but it gave me a spark of control. He didn't flinch, just leaned forward slightly, his smirk returning, sharper now, like a blade. My anger faltered, but it lit a fire in me. I wasn't going to be his victim. I stood, my legs shaky, and moved to a seat in the middle of the tram, forcing myself to look casual. I stood up and purposefully walked over to another seat in the middle of the tram car. He followed, slower this time, settling 2 seats behind me, diagonally, his eyes never leaving my back. He got up too and slowly walked up to a spot 2 seats behind, and diagonally from me, then sat down with the tiniest arrogant grin on his face. My heart sank, but I refused to let it show. He thought he had me cornered, that I was out of moves. He was wrong. I'd grown up navigating this city's streets, memorizing its tram lines, its shortcuts, its rhythms. This was my turf, and I'd use it against him. An idea hit me. A risky one, but it was all I had. The tram's doors opened at every stop for 5 seconds, all 3 sets simultaneously. If I could time my exit perfectly, I might lose him in the chaos. I stood again, this time positioning myself by the middle door, my body angled like I was ready to bolt. I shot up and stood by the middle door instead, determined to keep him on his toes. He stayed seated, his grin widening, convinced I was bluffing. He remained where he was this time, convinced that I was bluffing. The next stop approached, the tram slowing, its brakes squealing. My palms were slick with sweat, but my mind was clear. I had to make him think I was predictable, then flip the script. As the doors opened, I hesitated, glancing at him. He leaned back, relaxed, like a cat toying with a mouse. 5 seconds. The doors beeped, signaling they'd close. I stayed still, letting him think I'd chickened out. But as the doors began to slide shut, I lunged for the back door, slamming the button to reopen it. My heart pounded as I slipped through, ducking low, blending into the crowd spilling onto the platform. I didn't look back, I couldn't afford to. The tram's engine roared and I prayed he hadn't seen me. This was my shot. One mistake and he'd be on me again. The platform was a blur of shadows and footsteps as I crouched behind a bench, my breath shallow, my body trembling with adrenaline. The tram's doors slammed shut, its engine roaring. as it pulled away. I shut my eyes, praying he hadn't seen me slip out. My whole body tensed with adrenaline, waiting a long, painful second and jumping back in, keeping my head low, holding my breath and crouching behind the nearest seat. But I wasn't back on the tram. I'd stayed on the platform, betting everything on this one move. If he was still on the tram, I'd won. If he'd followed me, I was out of options. My heart thudded, each beat a countdown. I peeked over the bench, scanning the platform, empty. No sign of him. Had it worked? Then, a heavy step crunched behind me. My blood froze. I turned, and there he was, standing at the platform's edge, his massive frame silhouetted against the tram's fading taillights. His eyes locked onto me. No smirk now, just raw, burning anger. I pictured him frantically looking for me, face screwed up in anger, head turning like a fat, ugly meerkat. He'd gotten off just as I feared, and now he was closing in, his boots thudding with purpose. I bolted, my sneakers pounding the pavement, weaving through the station's pillars. The streets beyond were dark, lined with shuttered shops and alleys I knew too well. If I could reach the main road, I might find people, lights, safety. He was fast, faster than I'd expected for his size. His footsteps echoed, gaining on me, each one a hammer blow to my courage. I darted into an alley, my lungs burning, my mind screaming to stay sharp. I knew this city, every corner, every shortcut. I turned left, then right, doubling back toward a busy square I'd passed earlier. His steps faltered, just for a moment, and I seized it. I ducked behind a dumpster, pressing myself against the cold metal, holding my breath. His boots stopped, maybe 20 feet away. Silence. Then a low, guttural chuckle, like he knew I was close. My skin prickled. He was toying with me, savoring the hunt. I waited, counting seconds, my body screaming to run, but my mind forcing me to stay still. His footsteps resumed, slower now, searching. I peered out, catching a glimpse of him under a street lamp, his head swiveling, eyes scanning the shadows. This was my chance. The square was 2 blocks away, always bustling even at this hour. If I could make it, I'd be safe. I slipped out, moving low, sticking to the darkest corners. His steps faded as I sprinted, my legs fueled by pure desperation. The square's lights came into view, neon signs, late-night vendors, people laughing. I burst into the crowd, blending in, my chest heaving. I glanced back. No sign of him. The crowd swallowed me, a shield of noise and life. I stood up in excitement and threw myself at the foggy back window. And there he was, standing alone and victimless on that slowly fading out of sight station, watching me leave him and his vile plans behind. He hadn't followed. I'd done it. I'd outsmarted him. My legs buckled and I leaned against a vendor's cart, tears stinging my eyes. Not from fear, but from relief. I was alive. I was free. But as the adrenaline faded, a chilling thought hit me. How close had I come to never making it home? The square buzzed with life. Vendors shouting, music spilling from a nearby bar, people weaving through the crowd. I stood there, catching my breath, my hands still trembling from the chase. I'd made it. I'd outsmarted a man who'd seen me as prey, who'd hunted me through the city's shadows. But as I blended into the crowd, the weight of what had just happened crashed over me. I wasn't just relieved, I was changed. That night wasn't just a close call. It was a wake-up call, a lesson carved into my soul about the dangers lurking in the places I thought I knew. I found a payphone, its receiver cold against my ear, and called a friend to pick me up. As I waited, I replayed every moment, the tram, station, his unblinking stare, the chase through the alleys. I made it home and told no one my story for fear that I'd be admonished for my naivety. My parents would have grounded me for life, lecturing me about wandering alone at night. My friends might have laughed, calling me paranoid, but I knew what I'd faced. That man wasn't a random creep. His silence, his persistence, his anger. They spoke of something darker, something I'd escaped by the skin of my teeth. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes on me. Every shadow seemed to move. Every stranger's glance felt like a threat. I stopped walking alone at night, trading my love for the city's quiet corners for the safety of daylight and company. I was safe and I was proud of myself, and most importantly, I learned my lesson. But pride came with a cost. I'd always seen myself as invisible, untouchable, a kid who could slip through the world unnoticed. That night stripped away that illusion, showing me how vulnerable I was and how strong I could be when it mattered. Years later, I'm older, wiser, but that night still haunts me. It's not just the fear that lingers, it's the what-ifs. What if I hadn't noticed him? What if I'd boarded the wrong tram? What if I hadn't trusted my gut? I've read stories since then. Girls who didn't make it home, whose names became headlines. I could have been one of them, but I wasn't. Because I listened to that primal voice inside me, the one that screamed to fight, to run, to survive. That voice is why I'm here, telling you this story, hoping you'll listen to yours if you ever feel that chill down your spine. This wasn't just my story, it's a warning. The world is full of shadows and not all of them are harmless. I learned to trust my instincts, to see the city not just as a playground, but as a place where danger can wear a human face. Giving someone the middle finger never felt so good, but that small act of defiance was more than a gesture. It was me reclaiming my power, my life. So, the next time you're alone, waiting for a tram or walking a quiet street, pay attention. That uneasy feeling, that prickle on your neck, it's not nothing. It's your survival instinct, and it might just save your life. Looking back, that night wasn't just a brush with danger. It was a turning point. I'd always thought I was invincible, a teenager who could outrun the world's shadows. But standing in that tram station, feeling his eyes carve into me, I learned that invincibility is a lie. The city I loved, with its neon lights and hidden corners, wasn't just a backdrop. It was a chessboard, and I'd been forced to play a game where one wrong move could have cost me everything. That realization didn't just save me that night. It reshaped how I navigate the world. I never saw him again, but his shadow lingered. For months I'd check over my shoulder, avoid empty streets, question every stranger's glance. The city felt different, less like a playground, more like a maze with traps I hadn't noticed before. I started carrying a small knife, learned the tram schedules by heart, and never let my phone die again. Those changes weren't just practical, they were armor, a way to reclaim the confidence I'd lost. But even now, years later, I wonder who he was. A random predator? Someone who'd done this before? The not knowing is its own kind of haunt, a question that creeps into my mind on quiet nights. What I do know is this: my instincts were my lifeline. That night, every choice, staying calm, moving seats, timing my exit, was guided by a gut feeling I couldn't explain. I've since learned that science backs this up. Our brains pick up on subtle cues, warning us before we consciously understand. The threat, that prickle on my neck, that knot in my stomach, it was my brain screaming what my eyes couldn't yet see. I ignored it at first, brushing off his stare as paranoia. But when I listened, when I trusted that inner voice, it led me to safety. That's the real lesson here. Your instincts are a compass, don't ignore them. I've shared this story sparingly, mostly with close friends, always in hushed tones. Some nod, wide-eyed, sharing their own tales of close calls. Others raise eyebrows, skeptical. as if I'd exaggerated a harmless encounter. But I know what I felt. The weight of his gaze, the malice in his silence. I know what I saw in his eyes when he chased me off that platform, and I know I'm lucky to be here, writing this, instead of a name in a news report. That night taught me to see the world's edges, to respect its dangers without letting them cage me. So, here's my challenge to you. Trust yourself. The next time you feel that chill, that unease, don't dismiss it. Act, move, survive. The world is beautiful, but it's not always kind. I walked away from that night with more than a story. I walked away with a truth. Danger doesn't always announce itself with a growl or a weapon. Sometimes it's a quiet man at a tram station, watching, waiting. But you have the power to outsmart it, to rewrite the ending. I did. And if you're ever in my shoes, I know you can too. The doorbell rang at midnight, but the real terror wasn't the stranger at my door. It was what hid in the storm behind her. I lived in a house right off the highway in the rural Midwest, where the nearest neighbor was a mile away, and the night swallowed everything but the hum of passing trucks. Rain pounded the roof, thunder rattling the windows, when that chime cut through our sleep like a knife. My husband and my 3-year-old daughter and I were all asleep. 1 ring could be a mistake, 2 was a warning. By the 3rd, my heart was in my throat, and I knew whoever was out there wasn't lost. They wanted something, and in a storm like this, with the world drowned in rain and shadow, that something felt like a threat. My name's Anna, a mom who traded city lights for a quiet life in the heartland. My house was right between one town and another, almost right on the county line. A sturdy old place with creaking floors and a big circular driveway that curved past the garage and an overgrown barn. Our house had 2 large double doors in front, which we rarely use. We always used the door that was inside the garage. Life here was simple. Mark, my husband, worked long hours at a feed store. Lily, our 3-year-old, filled our days with laughter, and I kept the house running, savoring the peace of open fields and starlit nights. But peace is fragile, and that night, as the storm raged, it shattered. We'd gone to bed early, exhausted from a day of chasing Lily around the yard and fixing a leaky pipe in the kitchen. The storm had rolled in at dusk, a wall of black clouds that turned the sky to ink. Rain lashed the windows, wind howling through the barn's warped boards, but inside we were warm, safe, cocooned. Lily was tucked in her room, her nightlight casting stars on the ceiling. Mark was snoring beside me, his arm heavy across my waist. I drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, the kind that feels like sinking into warm water. Then, the doorbell. Ding. It was faint at first, a chime swallowed by the storm's roar. It woke me up and I thought maybe I was dreaming, but it rang again, sharper, insistent. It rang again. My eyes snapped open, the room pitch black except for flashes of lightning. Shook Mark, my voice a whisper. "Did you hear that?" He thought that I was hearing things until the bell rang a 3rd time, loud and deliberate. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, his face tense in the flickering light. It was very dark outside, but we have a dusk to dawn light, so most of the driveway is pretty well lit up. But the storm was relentless, rain sheeting down, blurring the world beyond our windows. Unfortunately, you can't really see the front doors unless you open the door and look out. The double doors were old, heavy, with latches that groaned, and we never used them. Too exposed, too far from the safety of the garage entrance. Whoever was out there was standing in the rain, in the dead of night, pressing that bell like they had a right to be there. Mark swung his legs out of bed, his jaw tight. "Stay here," he said. But I was already up, pulling on a sweater, my heart racing. I wanted to call the cops, but because we live on the county line, we know it's going to be a while before they can get there. The sheriff's station was 20 minutes away on a good day, longer in a storm like this. I grabbed my phone, the battery glowing at 10%, and followed Mark to the living room, where the double doors loomed like a gateway to something I didn't want to face. Lily's door was closed, her nightlight still on, and I prayed she'd sleep through this. The bell rang again, a taunt, each chime tightening the knot in my chest. Mark hesitated, his hand on the latch. "What if it's someone who needs help?" he whispered. I shook my head, my gut screaming to keep those doors locked. This is how horror movies start, I thought, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "We're not opening it." But Mark's a good man, the kind who stops for stranded drivers, who believes in helping strangers. He looked at me, torn, then cracked the door just enough to see. He decides that he's going to open the door. Lightning flashed, illuminating. A figure on the porch, a young woman, maybe early 20s, soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face. She looks normal except for the fact that she's standing at my door in the middle of the night. She says that she needs to use the phone, says that her car battery died or something. She's not sure, but she can't get it to start. Her voice was shaky, but there was something off. Too calm, maybe, for someone stranded in a storm. Her eyes darted past Mark into the house like she was searching for something. I stepped closer, phone clutched tight, and peered past her. I looked past her, and her car is pulled into my driveway just off the road. Not up to the house, not around the circle. It was a dark sedan, parked at the edge of the dusk to dawn light's glow, maybe 50 feet away, its shape blurred by rain and shadow. The headlights were off, the windows dark, and it sat there like a predator crouched in the grass. "Stay back," I hissed to Mark, my voice low. I told my husband, no way, this is how horror movies start. "We'll call the sheriff for you," I said loudly, hoping she'd hear the warning in my tone. We offered to call the cops, which would be the county sheriff. She frowned, her lips parting as if to argue. She asks over and over for the phone, her voice rising, insistent, but I shook my head, stepping between Mark and the door. "We're not letting you in." She kind of stomps off, her boots splashing in puddles, and we watched her walk back to the car, her figure fading into the rain. We watch her walk back to the car, maybe 50 FT away. I'm a bad judge of distance, so sorry. I dialed 911, my hands shaking as I relayed our address to the dispatcher. I call the cops. They say that they'll be there as soon as they can, about 15 minutes. The operator's voice was calm, almost bored, as if midnight calls from panicked women were routine. They don't sound very concerned, and at this point I'm not really either, I guess. It's just a girl, and she's apparently broken down. She probably just does have a dead battery after all. But my gut wouldn't settle. The way she'd looked, into the house, the way her car was parked so far from the door. It felt staged, like a performance. Mark closed the door, locking it tight. But we stayed by the window, peering through the blinds, the rain a relentless drumbeat against the glass. Then it happened. She opens the trunk, no lights come on, and she rummages around in the trunk. The sedan's trunk gaped open, a black maw in the storm, and she moved quickly, her hands digging through something we couldn't see. My breath caught. Why no lights? A dead battery shouldn't kill the trunk light. Then the driver's side door opens and out steps a guy. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face hidden by a hood. The back passenger door opens. Out steps one more guy, smaller, wiry, moving with a jittery energy. They all rummage around the trunk. No lights on. No words, no gestures. Just silent, coordinated movement, like they'd done this before. I can't hear anything. I can't hear them talking, and I can't tell what they're doing. My phone buzzed. The battery was at 5%. "Mark, this isn't right," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the storm. He nodded, his face pale, his hand gripping the edge of the couch. They all get back in the car eventually, and just sat there, the sedan motionless, its dark windows staring back at us like empty eyes. At this point, maybe 5 minutes have gone by. The rain didn't let up, the wind howling, and I felt trapped, pinned by those unseen gazes. I am silently praying that the sheriff puts his foot on the gas and gets here quickly, but I know it's going to be another 10 minutes or so at least. The air in the house felt thick, charged with something I couldn't name. I thought of Lily, asleep in her room, her tiny body curled under a blanket printed with unicorns. I wanted to check on her, to hold her, but I couldn't move, couldn't take my eyes off that car. The storm seemed to amplify my fear. Each thunderclap, a hammer against my nerves. Then a flicker. I think that I see the driver's light or smoke or whatever, and that part I'm not sure about. It was faint, like a cigarette's glow, but it vanished quickly, swallowed by the rain. My mind raced. Were they waiting for us to relax to think it was over? Or were they planning something worse? Then the impossible happened. I see something or someone walking towards the car from the right, coming from the direction of the barn. A man, tall and lean, emerged from the darkness, his silhouette sharp against the dusk to dawn light. He walks under the dusk to dawn light, straight to the car. He doesn't look at the house, he just walks to the car and gets in the back. My breath stopped. The barn was a quarter-mile from the house, its doors rusted shut, its interior a maze of rotting hay and broken tools. No one could have been out there. Not in this storm, not at this hour. We don't have a neighbor for at least a mile, and the creek behind the property was swollen, impassable. Where had he come from? And why didn't he look at the house, not even a glance? Then the car starts up and they slowly back out of my driveway and head north. The sedan's taillights glowed red, then faded into the storm, leaving only the rain and the pounding of my heart. I stood frozen, staring at the empty driveway, the dusk to dawn light casting harsh shadows across the wet gravel. The cops arrive about 10 minutes later and fanned out, their flashlights cutting through the rain. They search around but can't find anything. They ask us if we got a license plate, but they were parked too far away to see. The sheriff, a grizzled man named Carter, scribbled notes, his face unreadable. They tell us to call if they come back. Probably just kids messing around, he said, but his eyes lingered on the barn as if he sensed something too. Mark locked the doors, his hands still shaking. My husband goes and he gets his shotgun from the shop on our property and set it by the bed, its weight a cold comfort. We just try to go back to sleep, but sleep didn't come. I lay awake, listening to the storm, replaying every moment. The girls' darting eyes, the men's silent coordination, the fourth man's impossible appearance. They never do come back, and I don't know who those people were, and I don't know what they wanted, but they were definitely up to something, and I know that whatever it was not good. The storm eventually passed, the rain slowing to a drizzle, but the fear didn't. It clung to me, a shadow that followed me into the daylight. Days later, I walked to the barn, forcing myself to check it. The doors were still rusted, the lock untouched, but inside I found something. A single boot print pressed deep into the dirt, its edges sharp as if made that night. It was too large, too perfect, and it pointed toward the house. I haven't gone back to the barn since. We installed cameras, added floodlights, but nothing's caught them. Yet every night I check the locks, I watch the driveway, and I wonder, were they just passing through or were they testing us? And if they come, the back will we be ready? Sometimes in the quiet hours I swear I hear a faint chime like a doorbell, echoing from the dark. The eyes were what got me. At 12, I woke in my pitch-black farmhouse bedroom, drawn to the window by a feeling I couldn't name. There, under the moon's cold glow, a girl stared back, her gaze piercing through the glass. Beside one of the fence posts of the corral, there was a girl standing there. She was wearing a nightgown and rubber boots. She was facing my window. Who was she? Why was she watching me in the dead of night? That moment sparked a chain of terrors in our isolated Midwest home that still haunts me decades later. I've never been able to come up with a satisfying explanation. Stay with me. This chilling tale of whispers and shadows will make you question what hides in your childhood memories. It was the late 1980s, and I was 12, living in a rundown farmhouse in the heart of rural Illinois. My mom, Sarah, had moved us there after a messy divorce, chasing a quieter life. The house sprawled across 13 acres of untamed fields, with a sagging barn and a horse corral overtaken by weeds. It was a property with 13 acres, a dilapidated barn and horse corral that had overgrown weeds, and of course the main farmhouse. Built in the 1950s or 60s, it was a relic. Faded wallpaper, groaning floorboards, and no internet to connect us to the outside world. A single yard light flickered at night, casting eerie shadows. My stepmom, Karen, had joined us, her presence adding a layer of tension to our makeshift family. The nearest neighbor was a mile away, leaving us enveloped in a silence broken only by the wind or distant howls. My bedroom was a cramped nook on the second floor, its slanted ceiling and lone window overlooking the corral. I'd spend evenings there, flipping through comic books or gazing at the endless fields, trying to make sense of this isolated new world. At night, there were no lights other than the one in the front yard to show that our electricity was working. My room had a window that faced the horse corral. The house felt alive in a way I couldn't explain. Its creaks weren't just settling wood. Its shadows, not just tricks of light. Sarah called it character, but to me it was something heavier, like the air itself was watching. That night I jolted awake, my heart racing as if I'd run a mile. No nightmare, no sound, just a gut-deep urge to check the window. The full moon painted the room silver, and I peered out, expecting the usual empty corral. But there she was. One night I woke up in the middle of the night. It was a full moon, and I looked out of my window, and beside one of the fence posts of the corral, there was a girl standing there. She was wearing a nightgown and rubber boots. She was facing my window. She stood frozen, her pale face glowing, eyes locked on my window. The nightgown was old, flowing, like something from a faded photograph, and those rubber boots, muddy, out of place, sent a shiver through me. Was she lost? A neighbor's kid? But no one lived close, and it was well past midnight. I held my breath, unable to move, her stare pinning me in place. Then in a blink she was gone, the corral empty, the moonlight stark. I called for Sarah, my voice barely a whisper, but the house stayed silent. I crept to the door, peering into the dark hallway, expecting her silhouette. Nothing. Back in bed, I pulled the blankets tight, telling myself it was a dream. But those eyes, unblinking and cold, lingered in my mind. The next morning I told Sarah, but she waved it off. "Just your imagination, Jake," she said, stirring her coffee. Karen, lighting a cigarette on the porch, wasn't so sure. "This house has a way of messing with you," she muttered. I wanted to believe them, but deep down I knew something was wrong. The farmhouse turned into a place of unease, its walls seeming to pulse with secrets. That girl's face haunted me, her ghostly stare replaying every time I closed my eyes. Sarah and Karen tried to keep life normal, meatloaf dinners, card games in the living room, but the house fought back. From there, things seemed to get worse. As well, the TV that we had in our basement would turn on and off randomly. I'd be in my room, scribbling math homework, when a faint buzz of static would creep up from the basement. I'd bolt downstairs, my socks slipping on the steps only to find the TV dark, its screen reflecting my wide-eyed face. Once, I caught it flickering, a snowy image flashing before it shut off, like someone had been watching. Karen had her own scares. My stepmom would go out to the barn to smoke, and one time she was in there, she heard a girl say her name. She thought that it was me. But at that time I was at my dad's house in the city. She stumbled back to the house, her cigarette unlit, her voice shaky. "It said Karen, clear as day, Jake," she told me, her eyes darting to the barn silhouette. I'd been with my dad that weekend, hours away. Sarah's nights weren't any better. My mom would hear an old radio playing. In the middle of the night, she confessed over breakfast, her hands trembling around her mug. "It's like jazz from the 40s, but we don't own a radio like that." I searched the attic, the closets, even under the stairs, but found no radio, no wires, nothing. The worst was the constant sense of being watched. When I would wake up in the middle of the night to pee or to get some water or whatever, I would feel like someone was watching me. If I looked into our living room, it felt like someone was watching me through the window. I'd creep down the hall, the floorboards groaning, my skin crawling under an invisible gaze. The living room windows were black at night, showing only my reflection, but I'd swear something moved outside. A flicker, a shape, gone when I blinked. My heart would race, my hands fumbling for the light switch, but the room stayed empty, the silence mocking me. One evening, Karen and I were heading to the kitchen when we stopped dead. One day my stepmom and I were walking down the hallway and we both saw a nightgown go down into the bathroom. When we went to go and check, no one was in there. A flash of white fabric, like the girl's nightgown, vanished into the bathroom. We rushed after it, Karen's grip tight on my arm, but the room was empty, the air unnaturally cold. "What was that?" she whispered, her breath visible in the chill. I shook my head, my throat too tight to speak. The house was alive, its tricks growing bolder, and I was starting to believe the girl wasn't just a one-time vision. I stopped sleeping well, keeping my door cracked for the hall light's faint glow. But the darkness pressed in, the house's noises, creaks, thumps, whispers, amplifying my fear. Was it the wind, old pipes, or something moving just out of sight? Sarah insisted it was the house's age, but her forced calm didn't fool me. Karen was more honest. "This place is wrong, Jake," she said, her cigarette burning down to ash. Their words offered little comfort. The girl, the sounds, the shadows, they were real and they were closing in. The farmhouse became a prison of fear, its walls humming with menace. I avoided the barn, the fields, even my own room where that window seemed to invite her gaze. Sarah and Karen were unraveling, too. Sarah's laughter was gone, Karen's cigarettes a constant crutch. We didn't name the girl, but she was a silent presence, her shadow tainting every corner. I started sleeping with a flashlight, its beam a weak defense against the dark. The TV's static, the radio's tunes, the whispers in the barn. They were no longer oddities but warnings, building to something I couldn't predict. One night I woke with a start, my pulse pounding in the silence. The house was still, too still, like it was holding its breath. My door was open, the hallway a black abyss beyond. I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling, willing myself to stay calm. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft but unmistakable. This all came to a head, though, one night, when I woke up randomly again in the middle of the night. I used to keep my room door open, and it would look out to the hallway of our house. I was laying in bed, unable to fall back asleep, when, as clear as day, I heard a girl whisper my name. "Jake," it said, right beside my bed, sharp and chilling. my body locked up, my eyes snapping to the doorway. I was laying in bed, unable to fall back asleep, when, as clear as day, I heard a girl whisper my name. At first, I thought that it was a noise that my sheets made when I moved. I tried recreating the noise, but it didn't work. Then I looked out into the hallway, and standing in my doorway was a dark figure of a girl wearing a nightgown. She stood there, a shadow against the dark, her nightgown swaying, those muddy boots faint at her feet. Her face was obscured, but her eyes, I felt them, burning into me, unyielding. My breath caught, my voice gone. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was paralyzed, trapped in her gaze. I stared at it, unable to move. I turned on my bedside lamp, and when I did, nobody was there. The light blazed, harsh and blinding, and the doorway was empty, the hallway silent. My hands trembled as I gripped the lamp, my chest heaving. Had I dreamed it? The whisper, the figure. It was so real, as vivid as that first night by the corral. Here honestly took everything in my body to run down the hallway into my mom's room where I slept for the night, but eventually I got there. I stumbled from bed, the floorboards shrieking under my feet, and sprinted to Sarah's room, shaking her awake. "Mom, she's here," I gasped, tears stinging my eyes. Sarah pulled me into her arms, her voice steady but tight. "It's okay, Jake," she said, but her eyes scanned the dark doorway. I collapsed on her floor, a blanket clutched tight, the lamp burning until dawn. Morning brought no answers. Sarah searched the house, every room, every closet, but found nothing. Karen sat silently, her cigarette unlit, staring at the corral. "This house isn't right," she said, her voice low. The whisper, my name in that eerie voice, played on repeat in my mind. It wasn't a dream. It couldn't be. But who was she? A ghost? A memory the house refused to let go? The farmhouse held its secrets, and I was terrified they weren't done with us. The farmhouse became unbearable, a place where fear seeped into every moment. I refused to sleep alone, dragging a sleeping bag to Sarah's room. The hallway, light on at all times. Karen stopped her barn visits, her cigarettes piling up on the porch, her eyes hollow. Sarah tried to hold us together. Pancakes in the morning, old movies at night. But her voice trembled, her gaze always drifting to the windows. The house wasn't just old. It was alive, its creaks and shadows taunting us. The TV's static, the radio's ghostly tunes, the whispers. They were no longer mysteries but threats, a presence we couldn't escape. For unrelated reasons, we moved out of the house shortly after that, which, to be honest, at that point, I was very grateful. My dad's new job pulled us to the city, and we packed in a frenzy, leaving the farmhouse. I didn't look back as we drove away, the yard light a fading speck in the distance. But the memories clung to me, as stubborn as the mud on those rubber boots. I'm in my 30s now, and I've never been able to come up with a satisfying explanation as to what could have been making that breathing sound, or how it could also be able to move around like that and reacted to me yelling at it. I guess why I'm sharing this too is that I'm wondering, has anyone else had an experience like this? That whisper, my name in that soft, chilling voice, still echoes in my dreams, as real now as it was at 12. Was she a ghost, bound to the farmhouse's forgotten history? A trick of a scared kid's mind? I've tried digging into the property's past, but the records are vague. Old deeds, no names, no stories. The house has changed hands since, maybe hiding its secrets from new owners. I know that this may not be considered paranormal to most, but weirdly, I had a dream about a similar situation a couple of weeks to a month or so ago. That dream, decades later, dragged it all back. The girl, the whisper, the terror. Sarah and Karen never spoke of it after we left, but I saw it in their eyes. They felt her too. Now in my city apartment, I double-check the locks, flinch at every creak, the farmhouse's shadow lingering in my bones. Thanks for listening, and if you have any advice on my situation, then that would be greatly appreciated. So I ask you, what would you do if your childhood home became a nightmare you couldn't explain? Would you chase the truth no matter what it reveals? Or bury it, hoping it stays behind? Share your stories below. Have you ever felt a presence that defied reason? Your experience might help me unravel what haunted us. You've just heard 7 real horror stories from across America, but don't get too comfortable. What you've heard is only the beginning, because once these stories have entered your mind, they don't leave. The quiet places we spoke of tonight, they're still out there. The eerie sounds, the disappearances, the strange encounters, they all still exist, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next person to discover them. Maybe that person will be you. As you sit there, listening to the silence, ask yourself, what if it's not over? What if these stories are reaching out to you right now? This video may be over, but the journey has just begun. Subscribe and come back to hear more. The stories we have left to share are darker and closer than you think.